Let's start with the presentation. Who am I? I am originally from Natal, who is the capital of one of Brazil's states, one of the smallest actually, which is in the northeast. It's a very, very hot place. We have about 300 days of heat throughout the year. But I moved recently for good to the UK, so I'm now living in Sheffield. My background is that I have a degree in computer science. I have an MPhil in computer in systems and computing, and then I have a PhD in electronic engineering. So I have quite a broad spectrum of, my education is quite wide. I have worked in different places. So I have been a research assistant in the University of Kent. I have been a visiting lecturer in the University of York. I have been a senior lecturer at UFRN, which is the university in Natal, the Federal University of Rio Grande do Norte. And currently, I am a senior lecturer at Sheffield Hallam University in Sheffield, in the UK. Regarding my research, I have done quite a lot of stuff about research. So I have been working with research for about 15 years. I have been chair of major conferences. I have done some presentations. I have more than 50 papers published. I have done talks on TV, and I have done quite a lot of work related to gender gap in science. So I was part of a group called IEEE Women in Engineering at UFRN that helped girls to come and to stay in science, engineering, and computing. And then on all those research and outreach projects, I had some collaborations with other universities as well and other people. Regarding my research, I have done quite a lot on artificial intelligence, so that's my main area of research. I have worked specifically, mostly with machine learning. So I have worked in every single stage of machine learning. So this is, I have some results, some papers, some publications, collaborations in every single one of them. And then regarding application, as I enjoy really very much doing applied research, I have done handwriting analysis, medical diagnosis, a lot of biometrics with different modalities. I have done privacy in social networks, psychological analysis, so sentiment analysis based on face. I have done some bias analysis in judge sentences, and now most recently we are working with analysis of social media posts. Okay, is everybody with me so far? Yeah, can you type on the chat group? Yes, cool. Let's carry on. So the topic of today, what is fake news? If we think about fake news, I guess everybody has an idea of what fake news. Can you type very quickly, what do you think fake news is in the chat? What is fake news? One word from three of you. Let's see if we can interact. Not true, lies. Yes, that's it. You have several interpretations of fake news, what fake news is. So it's interesting to see where fake news came, because we all think that fake news is something quite new, especially with all the scandal from Cambridge Analytica and all the stuff that happened in the last, I would say, 5 years. But fake news is something quite old. So we have a registration of intended publications from journalists that were intentionally fake. So we have a registration of a printing. So someone draw this in 1742 to, talk about hate speech related to, females, like witches, witch hunt. We have some, if you look at manuscripts, we have one from 1749 that is related to Louis XV, the King of France. saying that he was immortal. So we have lots of registrations throughout the history. Ever since we have some sort of written registration that is considered to be in some shape or form fake news. But the actual motivation of fake news, why, if you think about why people would want to disseminate something that is not true just for the sake of sharing untrue stories. So we have some indications. In the very old times, the fake news dissemination was basically to, you know, say something bad about someone that I don't like. Nowadays, if you think about the motivations, you have some examples that are very much close to our reality today, but those ones, they have a very old start. So if we think about the way the educational system works, so today people, they go to school, but they are not normally trained to have critical thinking. If we think about science, science had a really big boom when people started to, you know, to have some proper advance, like late 19th century, early 20th century. But if we think about halfway through the last century, people started to lose faith on science based on new things that were being discovered or how science was being used. They didn't really enjoy that. And then there is this guy called Bowman who had a theory that relates very much fake news dissemination and creation and sharing with the modernity. So it's kind of a consequence of capitalism and the way we think, and then the way the capitalism systems tries to manipulate us so they would make us do what they want. And then in the end, we also have a religious influence. So if I have some piece of news that is true, but it's not helping my belief, my personal belief, I tend not to trust that, and I tend to think it is fake, even though there is scientific evidence that is true. So the motivations, they vary, and normally it's never only a single reason that fake news is disseminated and so attractive. So we have to understand it as a whole, holistic. We have to have a holistic view, not just a single, you know, it's never just a single reason that creates fake news. And if we think about the definition of fake news, just for a starter, there is not a universal definition, accepted definition for fake news, but those are the main kind of understanding that most scientific work can define. So you have misinformation, disinformation, and mal-information. Did you all knew there were three different, sorry. Is everybody hearing me? Is the audio okay? Yeah, everybody's fine here. So if we think about misinformation, disinformation, and mal-information, what are the differences? So everything's considered fake news, but they have different origins. So if we think about those two circles, the gray one and the blue one, so you have something that is fake, that is not correct, and then you have something that is created with the intention to harm. So you have the information that is fake, but it's just a mistake, I don't know, or it was shared for me and I don't know. So that's considered misinformation. So I shared something that is fake, but it's not my intention to harm anyone. And then you have disinformation, which is normally something that is related. It can be false, but you are sharing it with the intent to harm, or it is completely fake, and then you can get something that is real, and then you share some comments on top of it that is completely with the intent to harm. So you have, and then that would be mal-information. So you have these three slightly different definitions of what could be considered misinformation, fake news. When you divide them like this, it's much clearer the kind of information that you have that can damage people. And then it's easier as well when you are trying to classify this in a social network context as well. So we, spoiler alert, in our project, even though we are very early on in the project, we have this stuck with these traditional but not completely supported by the whole community definitions. Cool? So if we think about the way fake news works today, we have a very clear cycle that we can explore. So we have the actual creation of the fake news. So you have politicians that create fake news, you have people that don't like science, you have religious people. So those people, those different groups, they will create some sort of fake news. Then you have a very, very important component, which are the digital platforms, and they very much profit from the fake news. So don't have any illusions. They will gain, they will get money from it, from all the sharing, all the usage of the platforms. And then you have the people. And the people, they will be mostly influenced by the fact that they are not trained in school or at home to have critical thinking. And you have all the other elements that I mentioned previously related to religious beliefs or, personal experiences that will make them share something if they think it goes together with their beliefs. So you have this cycle that keeps going forward and backwards, and then it feeds itself. So it's very hard. If you cannot attack specific points of these, you will never break the cycle. Again, it's quite hard to target the individual. It's quite expensive because in order to make people have critical thinking, you have to go back to schools and change the way the school system works. That would be very hard. Changing how political influence works is also very hard. We can do that by voting, but that's also very susceptible to manipulation. So the easiest way to target this is going to the platforms, to the digital platforms, and trying to create or propose tools that could indicate that something is fake or not. So that's the goal that we are aiming with this project, okay? And then, where is the fake news, the most common fake news that we see today? So it's everybody, I guess, knows of some cases of people saying that they will not vaccinate their children because it causes autism. And there was the result of a guy who published a paper in the late 90s in the UK saying that, some vaccines caused autism, and then later on it was proved that he did that because he would have some financial gain. You have some people, some very important public figures that support this kind of information. So you have Donald Trump saying that climate change is not something real. And then you have the flat earth movement. And then you have the forever discussion between, evolutionism against creationism. And now creationism was rebranded, like people that from the business like to say they are calling creationism as design thinking now. So can you tell me any other source of main fake news that I forgot to mention? Or vaccine, climate change, flat earth, and then creationism are the main ones. Can you think of anyone? Can you write on the text, please, on the chat box? No? So let's move on. And then, based on all of this, so we had those fake news happening, 5G and COVID, I'm going to talk about that, don't worry. We had coronavirus. Yeah, we had those going on until quite recently and still going on, very much gaining space in the media, in everywhere. And then we had coronavirus. And then obviously people would not stop with the fake news related to coronavirus. And this is the main topic for our project. So fake news and coronavirus. I guess you've all heard something related to it. So 5G and 5G causing coronavirus or facilitating the dissemination of the virus is one that is very popular. But we had others as well. So we had the use of chloroquine as being the holy grail of it will cure all cases of COVID and blah blah blah. And then you have again major political figures saying that they uh, are taking it as a prophylaxis, which is ridiculous. We had as well the news that coronavirus was fabricated in a lab in China. And then you actually have both of them. You have people saying that the coronavirus, the new one, was fabricated in a lab in the US and it was released in China to, break China as a market. And then you have people saying that it was fabricated in China to break the world and then leaving China as the supreme ruler of the world, which in both cases is very ridiculous. And this is quite easy to prove wrong. So chloroquine was already proven to be not effective. The fact that the virus was fabricated in a lab is also being proven wrong. Obviously 5G doesn't cause COVID-19. So those fake news, they are very, very easy to break. But when you are scared and then you see like loved ones being dying, it's quite easy and quite understandable in a psychological point of view for people to think this is true. And then let's finally talk about the project. So the first thing I want to say is that we decided to investigate the dissemination of fake news. And then since I'm Brazilian and I'm from Natal, and I don't know if everybody is following the news in Brazil. I know we have a lot of news in the UK, if you are in the UK, regarding, relaxation of lockdown. But Brazil has been quite an interesting place to be not at the moment, because if it's not yet, it will be soon the epicenter of the pandemic in the whole world, because we have a very particular situation with the federal government trying to do something, try to not allow the individual states to protect the people. So just to give you an idea of the size of Brazil in comparison with other countries. So if you look at the flag of the United Kingdom, so that's the state of São Paulo. So the whole population of the UK is the same as the whole state of São Paulo, and then you have the whole country to have all the countries to fit. So Brazil is a very, very large country, but we have very similar characteristics. So despite the fact that we have many more people and then space, much larger country, we had quite a similar GDP. We had very similar political leaders, so they are both right-wing with majority in Congress. And then we had experiences with the dissemination of fake news. So in Brazil, it was the coup of the President Dilma in 2016, and then the election of Bolsonaro in 2018. And in the UK, obviously, we had the Brexit agenda with the 350 million that would come back to the NHS if they left the European Union. So despite the fact that we have different sizes and populations, and in not so much economically, we have very similar governments and very similar outcomes regarding experiences with fake news dissemination. And you might want to ask, why didn't you decide to investigate the US, the tweets from the US? And my answer to that is we wanted to investigate something that hasn't widely been done before. And there are quite a few works that investigate both China and then the US, and we wanted to do something slightly different as well. The situation at the moment with both countries is that in Brazil, we have people saying that there are no people dying, even though we have mass graves being digged. We have a president that is, even though it's very likely that he had the virus, he's seen in the streets shaking people's hands after he swipes his nose. You have the president and his cabinet saying that they want the economy back and they want people going back to work. And in the UK, at the moment, we have something quite similar. We have a relaxation that is happening far too fast. We have a very strange case with the tests, that they had tests, but they didn't have tests, and then the buying of the equipment. It was all very strange. PPE, they had PPE, but the PPE never came to the the medical staff, the NHS staff. And in Brazil, someone has just said that the president said it was just a flu, just a very mild flu. So we had some similar behavior from the government. And this is something very important, because when you think about fake news, it's not just people sharing lies. It's because they are sharing these lies because someone that is that has some power is saying that lies out loud. So when you have this kind of behavior from public figures, people are more likely to believe in them and then share. What we decided to do was, we decided to investigate two major cities. In our case, the cities were São Paulo and London. In both cases, they were the first epicenter of the pandemic in both countries. They are both the largest cities of each country. And then in order to have a comparison with a smaller city, we decided to use Natal, which is a small city, has about 1 million, the population in the size of 1 million. And then Sheffield, because it's where I am at the moment, and it would be easier for me to, understand the situation. Because fake news is also about understanding, the current social and political situation as well. So you can correctly classify your tweets and then be able to have some conclusions that would be meaningful without needing too many specialists to do that. We are collecting Twitter posts since the 8th of April. We have submitted requests for funding for this project. We didn't have the result yet, but our idea is to try to get the tweets from the beginning of the pandemic in these 4 cities. And then we used very generic keywords to download the tweets. So we had coronavirus with both the spellings of Portuguese and English. We had COVID-19 with and without the hyphenation, and then we wanted to investigate the language as well. So we wanted tweets in Portuguese if they were from Brazil, and we wanted tweets in English if they were from the UK. And then you can ask, why did you decide to do the tweets in different languages? Because traditionally, it's very, very common when people do analysis of social media in order to find fake news. They do something that is called content-based analysis. And this is something that we didn't want to do, because we wanted to investigate, and we still want to investigate if it would be possible, just by analyzing metadata without considering the actual language, if we could identify the specific features and specific characteristics from the tweets that were language independent, if we had similar scenarios in the different data sets. So our focus here is to be metadata focused. So our research will be done doing metadata. Our initial results that I'm going to show you in a minute, they are from a single week. So this is very, very early. This is a very, spoilery result. They were tweets collected from the 8th of April until the 15th of April. But we are still collecting this with the same frequency. From this week, this single week, we have more than 200,000 posts, which is quite good, it's quite a lot. And then we started our investigation ranking the 500th top retweets. Why did we decide to go for the retweets? We wanted to understand what would make someone retweet something. And the best way to do that was to rank them and see and look at the retweets that were mostly retweeted. When we did that, we started to do the manual labeling, because our goal for this project is to investigate the use of semi-supervised techniques. So when you think about machine learning, you have different ways of analyzing the data. When you don't have a label, you normally use something called unsupervised learning, but there is a new format approach that you have some of the data which has labels, and the rest of the data will be labeled based on this the data that has the labels. So we started to do the labels initially with the traditional labels. So we had the true news, which were the TN. We have the 3 categories that I presented previously, which is mal-information, disinformation, and misinformation. But when we started to look at the tweets, we decided to add a few more tags, a few more labels. So we had, apart from those 4, we had no news COVID, no news, and political figures. Why did we decide to have those 3 extra labels? The political figure one was the most obvious. In the UK, you will see this in a minute, you don't really have a lot of sharing from political figures. But in Brazil, because of the political situation at the moment, the actual government is the one fabricating most of the fake news related to coronavirus. So when they would share something, they would post something and people would share that information, that fake news. Sometimes they would make promises related to the fake news, and then we didn't have the means to verify if that information was true or not. So we decided not to evaluate for now the publications, the retweets from the political figures, but rather create a label to that specific kind of post. We also, when it was very clear that they were sharing fake news, like from news agencies that are officially fake, they publish fake information, we would also label that information as misinformation, mal-information, or disinformation, but it would still have the political figure label because we want to investigate that later. The no news COVID was something that is related to individual users. So they would share something, they would post something. It was related to COVID, like, oh, I'm sorry, I lost my father, and my father's funeral will be on this day. Please come and join. So this is not something that we wanted to investigate because it's something personal to individual users. And then no news. I don't know if you know a lot about Brazilians, but the thing that Brazilians love the most is to create memes. And then it's very common to find memes related to a topic that has nothing to do with the topic. So that's why we thought it would be interesting to have the no news, the NN label as well. So we would exclude that kind of information, that kind of sharing, which wasn't really related to fake news. Yeah. So our very first results, this is, we did this, like we finished this last Monday, these very first results. That's why I have some notes on the side, so I won't forget to say anything. Are you all with me? Can you just say, I'm good on the group chat? Yeah. Excellent. So what can we see from this graph? This graph will have the results, the quantities of posts, of retweets from each city. So you have London as blue, Sheffield as red, Natal as green, and São Paulo as purple. And then you have their distribution across the different possible labels. So you have true news, no news, COVID, disinformation, mal-information, no news, and then political figure. If you look at that, it's quite striking, because if you look at the most of the behavior when you look at London and Sheffield is quite similar. But when you look at Natal and São Paulo in comparison with the UK cities, is quite striking. So if you see political figure, which is something that I commented previously, you can see that São Paulo, most of the posts from São Paulo related to political figures. So a lot of posts that were retweeted in São Paulo, they were related with political figures. Surprisingly, you don't have too many in London. And then the second to last was Natal, and then Sheffield was people, they are complaining a lot about political figures. If we look at no news, you have no memes being shared in São Paulo, but quite a lot being shared in Natal. And this is a very regional difference. So it's quite common for, local communities to share this kind of information. Then this will be very easily retweeted. And then if we look at the three main definitions of fake news that we are using, we don't see a lot of actual misinformation in the UK, but you see a lot of misinformation in Brazil, in the cities of Brazil. And then when you look at disinformation, is more like even, still a bit more in Brazil than in the UK. And then if you look at more information, you have a lot of more information in the UK, and not that many posts in Natal and then São Paulo. So you have different behaviors from different tags in different cities. And this is what we wanted to see. We wanted to see how those behaviors of people, they were happening. The true news is quite striking as well. So most of people in the UK, they share true news, not that many in the cities of Brazil. So as I said, this is a very initial result. We finished and revised all the tags from our initial data set, and we are at this point starting to apply semi-supervised techniques. Our goal for the future is actually to investigate in depth those specific tags, looking at the metadata, as I said. So I don't want to worry too much of what is being said, but our main goal is actually to investigate if we can find these tags, this information that is related to the post, but is not actually related to what is written. And then if we can find that, it will be very good. Just to make a last comment on this, most of misinformation, which is when I'm using posts to damage specific groups, they were made against China. You don't have a lot yet at that point, because the posts that we were investigating, they were in April, mid-April. But we are already seeing from the later posts, people saying they will not vaccinate against coronavirus. So this is something that is moving, it's changing the kind of information that is related to misinformation. And then very few scientific outlets being shared. So you have a few in Natal, but not that many, like posts from universities, posts from groups, from research groups. They are not very popular in these most retweeted posts that we were initially investigating. Cool. So our project, as I said, I'm almost finishing before you always leave. Our project is, what do we need to do now? So we are, as I said, at this stage of analyzing, finishing, revising this labeling stage, and then we are already working on the semi-supervised approach. What for the general, public, what can I do to, fight fake news? Basically, you need to verify, you need to be critical. You must not accept what is being, shared with you, especially in groups, So one thing is for us to attempt to tackle fake news dissemination when we are talking about public information, public in the sense that social media is public. Most of the posts, unfortunately, people share them, for others to see around the world. But when we think about WhatsApp, it's very, very hard. And if you know a little Brazilian politics, most of the fake news dissemination, they happens through WhatsApp. So not a lot of people would trust Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. They would basically share this on WhatsApp groups, and then that's very hard to tackle at the moment. It's important that we focus on education. So me as a teacher, as an educator, I must enforce in these students the critical thinking. I must teach them how to be critical, how not to trust, and to do their own things in life in a critical sense. But this must be tackled at the very beginning. So we must understand what are the problems with the educational system, and how to make those children not to just go to school to pass exams or A-levels or GCSEs or NA if you are in Brazil, but they must go to school to learn and then be critical. And then there is something that Bauman also mentions, which is the journalism is losing credibility throughout the years, has been losing it. So it needs to, the public needs to get confidence back from news outlets. And this is something, again, very hard to do when you see some, news protecting and giving support to Dominic Cummings, for instance, and what he did. So it's quite hard, but those are the outcomes. Looking ahead, what can we do? But we can all be critical, and we can all, try to educate our parents, our relatives, our friends, and make them, question them, try them to help. Cool. And then just the last slide, I would like to acknowledge my group. This is a research that is not mine. It's a shared research. So it's Tuani, Laura, and Luciana. These are my colleagues that are working with me. And then I would like to thank Centric, because Centric is supporting this work, and the demographic program at UFRN as well. And that's it. That's my talk. Thank you very much. I hope you all could hear it fine. Let's see if I can hear you now.
Thank you, Marjory.
Thank you, Marjory.
Thank you, Marjory, for a very wonderful talk. Now,
Let's see.
If someone,
I will try to.
If someone has any question for Marjory, you can type it in a window, chat window, or you can unmute so that I can coordinate. Or if, let's see, if there are not many questions, then
I think is it okay if I leave the meeting and then come back? Maybe my audio will work again.
Yes, sure, Marjory. Yeah. So in the meantime, I'll just explain the.
So I can answer your questions.
Yeah. So I was trying to explain. Yes, if you have any questions, please do type in the chat window, or you can unmute and yourself and ask directly Marjory the questions. So how are you all, by the way?